We're going to get right to it. It is September, and that means the 2024 presidential primaries are rapidly approaching. As we head into the fall, campaigning is expected to reach much greater intensity as the candidates make their push in the early states of New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Iowa. One of those candidates making his stand, particularly in Iowa, showed his feisty side at the first Republican debate in Milwaukee last week. But can he catch, or anybody catch, Donald Trump? We're going to take that up now with the former Vice President of the United States of America and 2024 Republican presidential candidate, Mike Pence. Mr. Vice President, thank you so much for making time for us again. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Tom.
Mr. Vice President, you kind of got your Irish up at that debate last week. I think that surprised a lot of folks, particularly when it came to the barbs coming from 38-year-old first-time candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. All of the other candidates supported your actions on January 6th, really, except him. This is Ramaswamy in an interview this past week on this topic and what he would have done differently. Watch.
Most of the candidates on stage Wednesday night said Mike Pence did the right thing on January 6th. Do you agree?
I would have done it very differently. I think that there was a historic opportunity that he missed to reunite this country. Here's what I would have said. We need single-day voting on Election Day. We need paper ballots, and we need government-issued ID matching the voter file. In my capacity as president of the Senate, I would have led through that level of reform, then on that condition certified the election results.
Mr. Vice President, he wants people to pass a civics test before they can vote, but does he need a civics lesson?
Well, Tom, you kind of put your finger on it, and it may explain why Vivek Ramaswamy actually never voted in a presidential election until 2020. He didn't even vote for the Trump-Pence ticket in 2016. And I have to tell you, look, I was grateful that almost everybody on that debate stage recognized that I did my duty under the Constitution that day. Look, states conduct our elections, and once recounts occur, legal challenges are made, the only role of the Congress, the only role of the Vice President is to preside over a joint session where those electoral college votes are opened and counted. And frankly, Vivek's proposal to pass national election reforms that I actually support at state level, including Indiana was one of the first states in the country to adopt voter ID.
But at a state level,
you know, the last thing we would ever want to do is adopt national election laws. We have to preserve state-based elections in this country to preserve election integrity. His proposal was really incoherent and unconstitutional, and I think it's been roundly panned by people across the political spectrum. But look, this is what elections are about. You know, I was privileged to be on that debate stage, Tom. I love to have the chance to draw the contrast not only with the failed policies of the Biden administration, but also to lay out how I believe, by virtue of the fact that I've been a vice president, I've been a governor here in Indiana, I was a leading House conservative for 12 years. I think, in all humility, I think I am the most experienced, the most tested, the most proven conservative in this field. And I think that's exactly what it's going to take, not just to beat Joe Biden, but to turn this country around.
Yeah, Mr. Vice President, Mr. Ramaswamy also advocated at one point a 59% death tax. It's not a particularly conservative position, certainly would put thousands of family farms and small businesses out of business and kill jobs across the country. I want to move on. The latest YouGov Economist poll shows the former president...
Well, hang on one second, Tom, because I think you make a really important point there, if I may. I just rounded my 26th county in Iowa, and like my home county of Indiana, you know, there's an awful lot of great small businesses and family farmers. And not only is Vivek saying that we're going to do nothing about the national debt, he said that he would leave the tidal wave of spending and entitlements to some future president. The American people deserve to know that he's advocated in the last year for a 59% inheritance tax. The last thing we should do in the wake of Joe Biden's failed economic policies is raise taxes on anyone. When I was governor of Indiana, we cut income taxes, and we also completely eliminated death taxes in Indiana. Those are the kind of policies I'll advance if I'm president of the United States. But again, I want to tell you that elections are about choices. I'm looking forward to being on that debate stage in California. We'll continue to draw a bright contrast between the failed policies of the Biden administration and my vision for America, but also between all the candidates on that stage and any candidate that doesn't come and show up.
I've been on the ground in Iowa, and I've been on the ground in New Hampshire, and people say to me that Republicans say to me that they want to win. That's the thing that they are most concerned about. The latest YouGov Economist poll shows the former president in a statistical tie with President Biden in a hypothetical head-to-head matchup, even though Biden is a historically weak incumbent. And this is a trend now that we have seen over the last number of months. Do you believe, sir, that the former president can win a general election? And is that ultimately the message that you and other candidates need to drive in order to close the gap with him? Because the numbers, as I'm sure you would admit, aren't moving.
Well, look, I will tell you that I think it's early. You know, we're just turning Labor Day this weekend, Tom. You know, that's traditionally when the starting gun fires in politics. And, you know, there was a new poll out this week from another network that showed I'm essentially in Iowa about where Ted Cruz was at this point in the 2016 election cycle when he went on to win Iowa. And so I think it's real early. But look, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be absolutely essential that the people of Iowa and New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, and every Republican voter do their level best to fashion a standard bearer who will meet this moment and not just defeat Joe Biden, but I think we've got a chance with new leadership in the Republican Party to really have a realignment election to carry not only a bigger majority in the House, but win the Senate, win state houses around the country. Because as we look at the Biden administration's record, Tom, that has weakened America at home and abroad, families struggling in this economy, a crisis at our southern border, our liberties under assault, enemies of freedom on the march around the world. We need not only a new Republican president, but we need new, strong majorities. And I believe in my heart of hearts that Republican voters are going to give us new leadership in this party, fitted to the times, and I'm going to work my heart out to earn that right.
You know, one of the major issues that Americans are really still grappling with is the government's response to COVID-19, and whether it was Dr. Fauci's role or lockdowns or not pursuing other accessible treatment and prevention options. Looking back, sir, is there anything that you would have done differently as the head of the task force?
Well, let me say I couldn't be more proud of what the American people did during the worst pandemic in 100 years. I mean, the way that we reinvented testing with American innovation from literally a dead stop. We saw to the delivery of billions of medical supplies to hospitals, the creation of therapeutics, and 3 safe and effective vaccines. But let's be clear on a couple of points. Number one, China was responsible for the pandemic, and China needs to be held accountable. Schools should have never been closed. And our administration actually never advocated that schools close. In fact, we spent much of the summer of 2020 trying to get states around the country to reopen our schools and push back on the teachers' unions. And vaccines should never have been mandated against anyone in this country. I mean, the truth is it always should have been a decision by doctors. And so when I look back, you know, my bias was always to say, let's let governors, let's let local officials craft policies that are consistent with their values. But I think the lessons we learn from COVID ought to be grounded in freedom, and we ought to carry them forward when, not if, but when the next pandemic strikes our nation. Yeah,
and Mr. Vice President, just to follow up, if you were the president, would you have fired Dr. Fauci, or you had limited his role as things went on here, because he became so controversial because of some of these decisions that he was making?
Well, Tom, I appreciate the way you asked that. When I was tapped to lead the White House Coronavirus Task Force at the end of February, President Trump had appointed Dr. Fauci to that task force several months earlier. The people I added to the task force were people like the Treasury Secretary, Steven Mnuchin, and Larry Kudlow, our Chief Economic Advisor, because I knew that whatever we had to go through in the short term, we would want to have the policies to see our economy through it and bring our economy back. But I was disappointed with the way that late in the process, Dr. Fauci became more of a champion of some of the authoritarian policies of Democrat governors, and especially after Joe Biden as a candidate said that he was essentially going to put Dr. Fauci in charge. It seemed like things changed with him dramatically, and then the heartbreaking reality of that time period was, it's remarkable to think that the Biden administration in their first year of COVID tragically lost more Americans to the COVID pandemic with all of the tools that we left behind than we lost in a year when we began with no tools whatsoever. That's why they defaulted into vaccine mandates, and they dropped the ball on testing, they dropped the ball on therapeutics. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned, but I took the team that I was handed, and I believe we worked our heart out to save lives all year long, and I believe we did.
Mr. Vice President, before I let you go, Senator Mitch McConnell had what appeared to be another health episode this week, and we certainly wish him well. Certainly President Biden, even this week, appeared confused at FEMA headquarters. There's quiet talk about his capacity to continue to hold the office, whether the 25th Amendment should be invoked at some point. You know the rigor that it requires to do these jobs. What are your thoughts on the president's capacity to continue to serve?
Well, look, as I said in that debate in Milwaukee, Tom, I don't think we need a president who's too old, and I don't think we need a president who's too young. I think the challenges that America is facing, that American families are struggling with in this failing economy that families are facing, with a crime wave in our major cities, a crisis at our border, and war raging in Eastern Europe, China menacing. We need proven leadership that can bring renewed energy to the presidency and lead new majorities in the Congress, and see conservatives elected in state houses around the country. So, look, I'll always leave those judgments to the American people. You know, we choose our leaders in our elections, but for my part, we're gonna do our level best to take our story, our case, our experience, and our vitality forward in this campaign. And I'm confident the American people are going to choose the right leadership, not just for our party, but for America come 2024. Change is coming. Change is coming, Tom. I'm confident about the future because I trust the American people.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Vice President Mike Pence, thank you so much for being with us today.